In today's video, we're continuing on with our series of videos where we analyze all 31 teams, where we recap their 2017-18 season and make their off-season plans for this summer. Today, we're focusing on the New York Islanders, and that's coming up next. Hey everyone, welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. If you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. We review and discuss all 31 NHL teams. So if you're a huge hockey fan, consider subscribing and clicking the bell so you don't miss anything. Alright, so as I mentioned off the top, today's topic is the New York Islanders season recap for 2017-18 and their off-season plan for the summer of 2018. The New York Islanders are certainly going to be one of the more interesting teams to keep your eyes open for this summer. There's going to be a lot of decisions that have to be made and some potential moves that could be franchise altering. Of course, the big question looming, is John Tavares going to re-sign or will he go? We'll get into that here momentarily and I'll give you my thoughts on John Tavares. But of course, as much as that's the largest question looming, before we dive into that, let's recap their 17-18 season. The New York Islanders finished with a record of 35-37-10. Finished 7th in the Metropolitan Division, so very disappointing year. They were kind of an up and down season for the Islanders. At one point, they were kind of making some strides. Looks like they could be a playoff team, maybe a wild card team. But down the stretch, they really did not do well. Their defense and goaltending really failed them, in my opinion. They scored very, very well this season, but they really had trouble defending and keeping the puck out of the net. That was by far their biggest problem. The New York Islanders were a -32 this year in goal differential, which means they allowed 32 more goals than they scored. They were actually 8th best in league scoring. So really they can score with the best of them. Being in the top 10 is pretty solid. But when it comes to goals against, they were dead last, 31st. So obviously defense and goaltending, by far the weak link here for the team. So let's take a look here at individual players and how things went there. Obviously, we saw some breakout seasons from players like Matt Barzal and Anthony Beauvillier. Those two guys had tremendous rookie seasons. Barzal's likely the leading candidate to win the Calder Trophy, so they certainly have some bright futures there. They found themselves a line mate with Jordan Eberle playing there most of the year, so that second line ended up being very, very solid. And of course, their first line, John Tavares, Josh Bailey, and Anders Lee, they all had tremendous years. Anders Lee recorded career high in goals. He hit the 40-goal plateau. So, you know, even at his stage in his career, he's still improving. He has not yet plateaued. It will be interesting to see if 40 goals is the ceiling for him, or can he outdo himself again next year. So Lee is certainly a player to watch as well, because he's going to be eligible for a contract extension this summer, as well as Jordan Eberle for the Islanders. But we'll get into that here momentarily. But really up front, their goal scoring was tremendous. Their top two lines really produced a lot. Their bottom six wasn't too bad. I mean, if you take a look at their bottom six, you guys like Brock Nelson, Kyle Clutterbuck, Andrew Ladd had to play in the bottom six this year. You know, you've got Andrew Ladd is by far probably the worst contract on this team. He's not producing for what he needs to be earning what he has. Andrew Ladd still has 5 more years at $5.5 million. That signing did not work out so far. If they can find a way to get that contract off the books going into next year, that would be tremendous. Although I highly doubt that's going to happen. When you produce like he has that kind of contract, it makes it almost impossible to move. To do a buyout with 5 years remaining would still give them quite a long-term cap implication. So they probably aren't going to go down that route either. So they're probably stuck with Ladd for a while yet, before that contract is really worth doing anything with. So unfortunately, Ladd's the worst contract in my opinion on the team. But you know, hopefully he can bounce back and give them a little bit more in 2018-19. Overall, their defense had a terrible year as a team defensively. Taking a look at the individual guys on the back end, obviously Johnny Boychuk missed a fair bit of time due to injury. Boychuk only got into 58 games. Nick Leddy was a really bad -42. He put up 42 points, so offensively he produced, but defensively not so much. -42 for Nick Leddy. Guys like Calvin DeHaan was out a lot this year as well. Their back end certainly ran into their fair share of injuries this year, which did not help. But overall, they definitely need to focus on defense and goaltending. By far, goalies were terribly inconsistent. Both Halak and Grice had their moments where they were okay, but for the most part didn't really put up some very good stats at all. I know a lot of Islanders fans that I've talked to throughout the year really, you know, make sure they remind people it's not just the goalies. Their defense is just as bad, if not worse. from a defensive side of the game at least. So we'll see, but they definitely need to address both areas for next year. So let's take a look at their cap situation and what they've got for contracts going into next year and analyze how they should plan their off-season. So obviously right now the Islanders do have a lot of cap space. They have a lot of guys coming off the books that are not going to be impacting them anymore, like Nikolai Kulemin's off the books as of now. You get Jaro Halak's off the books as well. And traded out Jason Chimera before the trade deadline. He was going to be gone anyways via free agency as a UFA here if he continues playing. Either way, he's off the books for the Islanders, so that's always good as well. Defense, you got Calvin DeHaan, Thomas Hickey, and Dennis Seidenberg are all free agents right now going into next year. So I don't think Seidenberg returns. I think it's possible that Calvin DeHaan moves along as well. I think they might want to retain Thomas Hickey. Certainly, if you take a look at his season this past year, Thomas Hickey put up 25 points, was plus 20 in 69 games. So really, those stats aren't too bad. So really, I would not be surprised to see them retain Hickey and re-sign him. But I personally think DeHaan and Seidenberg don't return next year. They also have Ryan Pulock, who's a fairly bright spot as well, who's an RFA, needs a new contract. He got himself into 68 games, put up 32 points, was a -4. So really not too bad for the youngster. I think that he has a decent future, and I think Ryan Pulock will certainly get an extension here. I'm not sure exactly how long they're going to sign him for, but I wouldn't necessarily see him getting a long 7-8 year deal, but I could see them maybe doing a shorter term, anywhere from 2 to 4 years. At certainly a bit of an upgrade on his entry-level contract for sure. So Pulock, and then of course you got Scott Mayfield, who signed a fairly long 5-year extension, $1.45 million. So he's on the books for 5 more years. So he's around. Obviously, it's a low-value contract, but he can be a pretty decent bottom pairing guy. So we'll see how this defense looks next year. But obviously, Leddy and Boychuk were the 2 big ones. They're still under contract for quite a long time. Hopefully Boychuk can bounce back with a better year, be healthy. That would be good as well. Maybe going after some free agent defensemen, or maybe looking to do some trades that way. So the defense definitely could use an upgrade. In goal, if you still got Thomas Greiss for a couple more years at $3.3 million, that's going to be difficult to move. So they might need to hang on to him. If he only had 1 year left, I think it's more likely maybe they might buy him out and move on. But they need somebody to play goal. Jaro Halak's a free agent. He's likely not returning as well. So they do need to go find themselves a goaltender. I don't think any of their young goalies in their system will be NHL ready as of right now. So really, who could they look at? Well, in the free agent market, you've got quite a few options. Not to say they might explore this to be a trade as well. But in the free agent market, you've got some veterans like Jonathan Bernier and Cam Ward. Not sure they'd be the greatest answer solution right now, but certainly some options to keep in mind. One guy that might be tremendous for them would be Carter Hutton. I don't think St. Louis is going to let him hit free agency though. I think they'll get him locked up before July 1st, but if he hits the open market, he'll get a lot of interest as well. Certainly some intriguing options for them to consider in goal, and on defense, for the most part at forward, they're fairly set. Obviously the big question that we'll get into here in a second is John Tavares. John Tavares, their top 6 is pretty solid for at least 1 more year for sure. The bottom 6, they have enough guys under contract. You know, it wouldn't be completely shocking to see them maybe go after 1 or 2 depth forwards, bottom 6 guys perhaps, but they also have some other prospects that haven't really been full-time NHLers or made their debuts yet that certainly seem interesting and intriguing to jump into the lineup as well. Will be interesting to see if Josh Hosang can progress into a full-time NHLer, and then they have a very solid prospect coming in, Kiefer Bellows as well, who's just had a tremendous year in the WHL. They may want to give him a year in the American Hockey League before giving him a shot at the NHL level, but he's certainly a guy to look out for as well. He has an opportunity to be quite a goal scorer, at least he has been during his junior and college career so far. So we'll see how that goes, but Bellows is certainly a prospect to keep your eyes on for sure. Of course, we got the 2018 NHL Draft, where the Islanders have a lot of picks. They've got a couple picks that they picked up from the Calgary Flames in the Travis Hamonic deal, plus their own. So they have 2 first-round picks as well as 2 second-round picks. Obviously, their first-round picks ended up being back-to-back. So they got some picks to work with here. The picks they have, they can either choose to pick some good prospects that they can use for the future, or they could potentially try to package things up, either move up in the draft or maybe improve another area of their team if they have an opportunity, maybe trade for a defenseman or a goalie. I mean, the Islanders have been known to make lots of deals at the draft. This won't become as any surprise if they become a very active team. By the time the draft hits as well, I'm sure they'd like to have a better idea what's going to happen with John Tavares. Obviously, at that point in time, July 1st wouldn't have been kicked around yet, so we may not know the full final answer on Johnny T, where he's going to go, but hopefully by then they'll have a better indication from his agent and his camp to find out if he's going to be coming back or not, because they may want to make some deals, to kind of have plan B in place in case he decides to move on. I mean, another contract as well that needs to be done for next year is Brock Nelson. I mean, Brock Nelson's a restricted free agent, so they're likely going to retain his services. But, you know, that he's a name that's been brought up a lot in trade rumors. But at the same time, if they're going to lose Tavares, they're a lot likely going to want to trade Nelson as well. So they kind of need to know what Tavares is doing in order to make other moves to address this franchise. And it's kind of, in my opinion, could hold some things up and kind of maybe handcuff them a little bit before they jump the gun on some other potential deals that might go down. Now, another big question besides Tavares is Lou Lamoriello. There's been lots of speculation that Lou's going to be brought in to either be the president of hockey operations or the general manager. He's either going to oversee things and have Garth Snow work for him, or he'll be the new boss and maybe Garth Snow will be moved into a president's role or a different position, and likely still remain with the club, though, as from what the indications have given us so far. But, you know, bringing in Lou could offer a lot of credibility to this franchise and might help in retaining John Tavares. So, you know, there's lots of questions, not too many answers at this point. John Tavares is keeping everything really, you know, close to the chest here. He's not really showing his cards. Nobody really knows what to think. I even saw an interview the other day where they were talking with Matt Barzal over at the World Championship Tournament over in Denmark, and asked him what his thoughts were. They also asked him if he talked to Tavares recently, did he have any indications, and he indicated that throughout his rookie season that he had gotten quite close with Tavares and they talked quite a bit, that he had, I think it was either lunch or supper with him just a few weeks ago after the season had ended, and he tried to kind of make him talk and give him some ideas of what he was thinking, and he couldn't get anything out of him. So Tavares isn't saying anything to anybody, not even teammates or close friends, so it's really hard to predict where things are going to go. The so-called NHL insiders seem to think that as each day passes by, that the odds of him returning to Long Island are slimmer by the day. I mean, I've heard people say it's 50% chance he returns. Some think it's less and some think it's more. It's really hard to say. I think it would be a huge loss for the Islanders to lose Tavares. You know, they've had him in their system now for a long time. He's been their top player for many years. For him to walk would be a major blow to the team and to the organization. However, at the same time, you can understand that Tavares wants to win. Yes, they have some plans in place for a new building, but it is looking like they possibly might be delayed getting started and building that, and it could end up being 3 to 4 years before that building actually opens up. We did a video not too long ago discussing where he might go should he leave the Islanders. We discussed the top 4 or 5 teams. If you missed that video, there's going to be a YouTube card up here in the corner. You can go check that out. So based on everything I'm hearing, it looks as though the best chance for Tavares to return is probably about 50-50. It's really difficult to say what he's going to decide. Nobody seems to know for sure, but I think it could help the Islanders if they are able to bring in a guy like Lamoriello to help in those negotiation process. Indications before seem to say that the owners were dealing with John or his agent directly, and that Garth Snow wasn't handling the negotiation. So I'm not sure if that's accurate, but that's what I've seen reported from different places before. So maybe a guy like Lamoriello may not actually end up having any impact, but it could help maybe talking to Tavares and kind of showing him the direction of the franchise and what their future plans are to make this team into a winner. So leave your comments down below. What does John Tavares do this summer? Does he end up staying with the New York Islanders, or does he move on? And if he does move on, what do the Islanders do next? They need to have plans A, B, and C in place as contingency backup plans should he walk. Because when you have a franchise player going out the door, that can have a severe impact on your franchise. Obviously, there's not too many other top centers that are going to be in the free agent market this summer. The free agent market in the center ice position is relatively thin outside of Tavares. So it's not like there's going to be many other guys they could go after and try to sign. They could try to pull off a big trade, but really with what it would cost them, they'd end up weakening their team in other areas. So it's a big question mark. I feel like the Islanders are somewhat handcuffed to know what to do here until they really know the Tavares decision. They have to be prepared for both scenarios of him staying and him leaving, and kind of, you know, play both sides here until they have a firm answer from Tavares. But based on their salary cap situation, there should be no reason why they can't offer him an 8-year contract at whatever value that he needs to be paid in order for him to retain and stay as a New York Islander. Really, there's no reason based on the cap that they can't pay him appropriately. It's just really going to boil down to, does he want to remain with this franchise? Does he feel like he has a good chance to win with the Islanders? I think it's all about winning for Tavares. I think that there's going to be plenty of teams throwing money at him. Does he want to stay with this franchise, or does he ready to move on? If you're new to the channel, I hope you consider subscribing. We cover all 31 NHL teams. There's plenty of content here for all fan bases to enjoy. So again, if you're new, I hope you'll consider subscribing. Don't forget to hit that thumbs up button if you like this video. I'd really appreciate it as well. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. We'll catch you next time. Bye.